Guys, it's time for one last review video. This is the one that should be fresh in your brain because we just took our Unit 3 test, but follow along and answer the questions. This might actually help you go back and get an 80 on your Unit 3 test that we just took. All right, so question 1 says, which rock sample is most likely a foliated metamorphic rock? Okay, so remember, metamorphic rocks are formed when either an igneous or a sedimentary rock get pushed deep within the earth and get exposed to high heat and pressure, right? Just like a caterpillar undergoes a metamorphosis into a butterfly, a metamorphic rock comes from either a sedimentary or an igneous rock. Now, foliated means that it's going to have wavy, distinct patterns within it. Okay, so we're looking for some wavy patterns. So go ahead and pause and choose your correct answer. All right, so we should have chosen A because A, again, we have this nice foliation, which is this wavy pattern that comes from the rock being exposed to that high heat and pressure. Question 2 says, use the diagram of the rock cycle to answer the question that follows. So this is a rock cycle. We have to be aware of how to read it. So the rock cycle has no true beginning or end. It can start anywhere and it can end anywhere because these rocks are going through this process at any point in time on the planet. So this is something that's happening all the time. So it says, what has to occur to change igneous rock into sediment? Well, let's go ahead and let's find our igneous rock, which is right here. And we want to go from igneous rock, so we're turning the igneous rock into sediment. So we're following the arrows. So we need to read what is the action that happens to take us from igneous rock to sediment, right? So we need to take this action right here, and that will be our answer. So go ahead and pause. Make sure you read the action and make sure you're recognizing it's asking us, we're changing from igneous into sediment. So we just need to follow the arrow. So we found our igneous, we followed it to the sediment, and now this action is going to get us there. So go ahead and pause and answer. So our answer here should be weathering, transportation, and deposition, because again, that's the action that's indicated on our arrow. So our igneous rock is weathered, transported, and deposited, and eventually we wind up with our sediment, which is just the broken up pieces of the rock. Question 3 says, this is a diagram of a soil texture triangle. Farmers can use this chart to identify the type of soil found on their land and determine the likelihood of erosion and other important factors. So it says, what type of soil does a farmer have if the soil contains 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay? Now on this one, remember, we have to draw the arrows accordingly based on the composition of the soil. So remember, clay is our smallest particle, sand is our largest, and then silt is kind of that Goldilocks in between. So go ahead if you want to pause this, and you can even pull up those Google slides that we worked out of this earlier on with our soil texture triangles. But go ahead and pause and see if you can complete this, and then we will move on. Okay, so to save time, I'm just going to kind of draw with my arrow, but we are going to, I'm going to show you how to do this just in case you weren't able to do it beforehand. So we've got 40% or 20% clay. Let's start with clay. I always like to start with clay. So we've got 20% clay. So I'm going to put my cursor on my 20 mark, and I'm going to follow the line over. Okay, I'm just going to make a mental note. You can also do this in Google Slides if you need to visualize, but I'm just going to make a mental note here. So I'm going to draw my arrow over from the 20 mark. Okay, so we've got 20% clay. Next, I always like to do my silt, and if you notice this little arrow, we will draw our silt arrow down at an angle. So we've got 40% silt. So I'm going to come to my silt side, I'm going to run my arrow along, and I'm going to find the 40. And I'm going to mentally draw my picture or my line from 40 down in the direction of the arrow. Okay, so I know I had 40 silt and I had 20 clay. So far, if I can just keep those in my mind, so far these two lines are intersecting at loam. And then finally, we had 40% sand. So I'm going to come to my sand side on the bottom, and I'm going to put my imaginary arrow here. I'm going to draw upwards and envision that line. Again, you can do this for real in Google Slides with that soil texture triangle that I gave you on your Unit 3 test and in your assignment from last week. But if we can visualize, again, we had the 20 for clay, the 40 for silt, and the 40 for sand. And those are all going to intersect here at loam. So we're going to choose loam for this answer. All right, question 4 says, which activity demonstrates chemical weathering? Chemical weathering is going to be a change in the composition of the rock. All right, anytime we have chemical weathering, we're going to see either, a change in color, something's going to be dissolved, there's going to be some kind of chemical reaction, versus physical or mechanical weathering, which is just breaking the rock apart into smaller pieces. It's not changing color, it's not changing composition, there's no chemical reaction involved, it's just a smaller bit of the rock. So this one is asking for chemical weathering. So go ahead and pause and make your selection. So for this one, we should have chosen B, the dissolving of limestone by acid rain. Again, anytime we see like something is dissolving or color is changing, that's going to be an indication of chemical weathering. The rest are all physical, and I think we actually did this one as a warm-up. But freezing water in the cracks of a sandstone sidewalk, that's frost wedging. As that ice cools and expands, it just cracks the rock. Nothing's changing on a chemical level, it's just being broken apart. Abrasion just means breakdown, so breakdown of rocks from water. And then grinding of talc into a powder. Again, you're not changing the chemical composition of the talc, you're just making it smaller and you're making it into a fine powder. That's what baby powder is talc. And then finally, question 5 says, many scientists are worried about some of Earth's non-renewable resources because humans are blank. This is actually one that we're going to skip over because this was from a different lesson that we didn't go over in this semester. So you will not see this question on your particular midterm just because we didn't do that. We're going to hit it later at the end of the semester. But if you were going to make a selection for question 5, you would choose this one. So a non-renewable resource is just one that can't be renewed. So we're worried about using up too many materials that can't be replenished, but we'll get there at the end of the semester. Okay, so we have those 4 questions. See how we did. Yay, we got a 5 out of 5. So again, these are not all of the questions from Unit 3 that will be on your midterm, but it is a really good jumping off point to make sure we have. So make sure you review these videos if you need to again. And when we take our practice midterm and our midterm, you'll be in really good shape. If you have any questions, let me know. And if not, we should be ready to roll for our practice midterm.